Greetings, everyone. My name is Ami Julian, Manager Corporate Finance and Advisory. Kama ilivyo ada, kila Ijumaa jioni tuko hapa kudiscuss kuhusu masoko yetu ya fedha. So just as we always do every Friday, we are here to discuss about capital markets, how they've performed, what are the trends, what are we seeing which is new, what type of investment ideas investors can partake in order to maximize their returns, and what has happened, what has prevailed in the markets towards the particular week. So kama ilivyo ada, siku ya leo tutakuwepo hapa pamoja na timu nzima ya CRDB brokerage unit. Kindly give us 5 minutes to put our infrastructure correctly, and within 5 minutes we should be able to resume. Asanteni sana.
Hello?
No.
Sorry.
Yani,
Nimekusumbua. Nilikuwa nakuuliza. Hao watu wananiuliza kuhusu hii kitu ya beauty. Sasa mi I can't kufafanulia them. Nilikuwa nauliza source gani ulioipata?
Okay.
Ilikuwa ina ambazo ni za zamani na ambazo ni mpya ili niwatumie.
Ngoja nicheki kwenye website ya BOT hapa.
Uh, good evening na habari ya jioni, ladies and gentlemen, na nawakaribisha rasmi sasa kwenye webinar yetu ya week 14 kwenye upande wa capital markets. Kama alivyotangulia kuintroduce my colleague Bwana Ami, mimi naitwa Ibrahim na of course nitakuwa tunasimamia kidogo mjadala wa leo. So asanteni sana pia kwa muda wenu na kwa kuungana nasi katika kikao cha leo. Kama ilivyokuwa ada yetu, tuna mada kuu 3 ambazo tutajaribu kuzipitia wiki hii, ambayo ndo itakuwa ni utendaji wa soko la hisa, the stock market performance, mwenendo wa masoko ya dhamana ya serikali na za kampuni, corporate and government bonds. Pia tutagusia matokeo ya minada ya dhamana za serikali, au auction results, pamoja na matarajio ya wiki ijayo. So we'll also be looking at the upcoming government bonds auctions. Alijitambulisha kidogo, lakini naomba tu nimtambulishe tena. Tutakuwa na mtoa mada yetu mkuu Mr. Ami Mwamunyi. Ami yeye ni manager wa corporate finance and advisory. Hatakuwa peke yake, atakuwepo na Mr. Imani Muhingo. He's the senior manager of the security brokerage services. Nadhani watu wengi hapa watakuwa wanamfahamu vizuri. Tutakuwa pia na Mr. Luitiko Mbilinyi. Yeye ni manager of trading and operations. Na mimi pia nitakuwepo, Ibrahim Kasim Zakaria, nipo kwenye upande wa market research and financial analytics. So naomba tena nirudie, kama wiki iliyopita, jisikie huru kuuliza maswali yako kwa kupitia sehemu ya maoni chat. Kuna sehemu hapo ya kuchat, lakini pia kuna eneo la Q&A, question and answers. Feel free to write down any question na tutakuwa tunajibu as we go on. Lakini pia kwa ambao watapenda tuwafungulie mic waweze kuuliza maswali, tuwe more interactive, hiyo option pia hipo. Kwa hiyo karibuni sana. Lakini pia for the benefit ya wasikilizaji ambao hawajui lugha ya Kiswahili, kwa sababu tuna watu kutoka nchi mbalimbali, naomba tu mniruhusu tu kutoa short introduction in English. Asanteni. So good evening and welcome to our weekly capital markets update. I'm Ibrahim, and basically we'll be looking at 3 major topics today. We'll be looking on the equity market performance of the DSE. We'll be looking at activities in the secondary market or secondary bond markets, both for government and corporate bonds. And we'll be looking at the results of the most recent government bond auction that was conducted during the week. And we'll also be looking at the upcoming bond auctions, or government security auctions. And we'll also be looking at any other business, including corporate actions and any other capital market highlights during the week. Today you'll be with Mr. Imani Muhingo. He is our senior manager, brokerage services, security brokerage services at CRDB. You will also be with Mr. Ami Mwamunyi. He's the manager of corporate finance and advisory, but also will be with Mr. Luitiko Mbilinyi, who is the manager of trading and operations, and myself, Mr. Ibrahim Kasim, who is dealing with market research and financial analytics. But finally, please feel free to post your questions in the chat throughout the session. You can use the chat option. You can post your questions, but also in the Q&A option, you can also raise your questions as we go on. So may I please welcome Mr. Ami, who will take us through today the week's update. You're welcome.
All right, thanks a lot, Ibrahim. Without further ado, I'll proceed to the report itself. Ibrahim, kindly share the slides on the screen. So actually, In Tanzania this week, it was kind of a short week. We had 3 business days to work on, since the 2 days earlier this week were public holidays. So within these 3 business days, of course, there was activity in the markets, and we will go through those activities as my friend here prepares to bring the information on the screen. But I would like to bring in Mr. Imani, who's our senior manager, just to provide insights on what has been happening in the market as we wait for the screen to be depicted. Imani.
Thank you, Ami. And again, I would love to welcome all of you in today's session that will look at what has gone on throughout the week. As Ami said, we only have three trading sessions during this week. So it's evident in the turnover that activities were a bit slow, but that is because there were few trading sessions compared to last week. And directly, if you look at how the market has performed, the total turnover has gone down by 13 billion, up to 13 billion by 65%. And as aligned that the reason is fewer trading sessions during this week. Similarly, the volume of traded shares traded has also fallen by 51% for the same reason, that this week has had 3 trading sessions. And on top of that, I would say, investors have come from a long weekend. They've spent a lot of money, so we would not expect the same investors to be very conversant with investments just the following week, but we expect to see a revival in the coming weeks. And the total turnover and domestic turnover have both gone up. The domestic turnover has gone up more than the total turnover. That is because we see a lot of activities in domestic markets, because the domestic turnover, the domestic capitalization only covers domestically listed counters, while the total market capitalization covers domestic and cross-listed counters. So we see that the domestic capitalization has gone up by 0.2%, while the total capitalization has risen by 0.01%. So if we just and we see here the gainers, that CRDB has gone up by 1.3%, but most of the gainers are cross-listed counters. So what this shows, because the total capitalization has gone up slightly compared to the domestic capitalization. So even if these cross-listed counters have gone up by, Jubilee has gone up by 10.8% and EIBL has gone up by 3.3%. The domestic size, CRDB in the domestic size has risen by 1.3%, has lifted the domestic capitalization compared to how the cross-listed counters would have lifted the total capitalization. So some of the other large counters, including KCB, we see KCB has fallen by 5.8%, and that limited the rising of total capitalization. While NICO and DSC suppressed domestic capitalization as well, but the size of CRDB, given the size of CRDB, CRDB is approximately close to 10% of the domestic capitalization. So the rise of CRDB, the slight rise of CRDB by 1.3, saw a significant shift relative to the total capitalization, the significant shift of the domestic capitalization relative to total capitalization. And in terms of turnover, we see TCC, because of a few block transactions, TCC accounted for 65% of the total turnover during this week, followed by NMB, which accounted for 19.2%. CRDB has accounted for 15%, which is usually the top mover. CRDB is usually the top mover, but this week, because of block transactions with the TCC counter, we see that TCC is the majority, sees the majority of transactions, accounting for 65% of the total turnover. Now, in terms of investor participation, we have seen this trend, the same trend since 2022. There are some hiccups here and there, but the common trend is that domestic participation has been significant compared to foreign participation, as seen on this graph here on this slide, that domestic purchase participation is 93.4%, while domestic sale participation is 92%. And we have seen this because initially it was the monetary policy adopted by the US, which made the USD a scarce commodity in global markets. And then that saw a withdrawal of funds of international investors from particularly developing markets. But what's unique about Tanzania is the increased domestic participation that was enough to absorb the foreign outflow from the Tanzanian market. And despite a consistent outflow of foreign capital, the DSE has consistently risen since 2022. The domestic index and total index, the domestic index represented by the Tanzania Share Index and the All Share Index, have both gone up consistently year by year, even though foreign capital has been withdrawing. That shows a significant rise of domestic appetite in our market. So consistently since 2022, we have seen this trend. What we are seeing right now, it's nothing new. We expect to see this for foreseeable future, especially now that the increased uncertainties, particularly in the US, as the new administration is imposing tariffs on global trading partners. So this volatility pushes a lot of investors to seek safe havens in the US, in fixed income securities in the US, but also the purchase of gold. We see the price of gold consistently rise. And this lifts developing countries with a lot of vulnerabilities and a lot of risks, which international investors evade from. So we most likely will see maybe a continuation of a similar trend for foreseeable future until things have settled in global markets. But the domestic participation has covered that, has absorbed that shock, and we see the increased appetite of domestic investors, the increased participation of domestic investors absorbing the foreign outflow.
So, Mr. Imani, before we proceed towards the bond segment, just had a few questions over here. We've just noticed that CRDB went up from 780 to 790. This is a new high. So, do you see the momentum persisting toward moving towards February and March? And also, we are seeing Nicole going down. Its trend is kind of is on a range phase. What's your opinion? Because it's the counter which I think for the past year it was one of the top performers in the market, giving investors at least 100% return. But we have seen this year it shared its share price dropping until in the ranges of 500. What do you anticipate in these two counters as CRDB hits a new high, Nicole is ranging, and also DSE is also on a range?
Thank you, Ami. Well, for the CRDB counter, I think the most immediate determinant now will be the dividend. We wait to hear the dividend announcement. We know the dividend policy of CRDB has been consistent between 33 and 35%. Remember last year they paid 31%, which was relatively lower compared to other years. So we went to see this year where the dividend policy will stand, where the payout ratio will stand. But I think that will be the primary determinant of the direction of the price. We have seen it, the price hovering around 780 and 790 in the last few weeks. I expect still, considering the size of the bank, considering the performance, considering that the growth of profitability that the bank has shown in recent years and the potential that is seen in the banking sector, I still expect an upward direction. But in the immediate period, that is where we are to see the direction where the price will go. But I think the primary determinant will be the dividend. And for Nico, I've maintained this position for a while. Well, I think it's been a momentum effect. At some point, the demand for nickel was significant, and that lifted the price up to 800, approximately 800. And now maybe some investors are trading on history, because even in the last 2 years, the price of nickel at some point went significantly up in just a matter of months. It went to 600 and then went back to 400, went back down to 400. So the same thing happened last year. Unfortunately, nickel does not have a consistent dividend policy. I would say maybe it's the prospects of a dividend that the price has gone up to 730, 720. I would not be surprised if the price falls below 700. I believe the price maintaining above 700 is just a momentum of excitement by investors. I don't think it's highly supported by fundamentals.
All right. Maendeleo Commercial Bank was a surprise entrant in these gainers and losers segment. We see it gaining 8.8% within a space of 3 business days. So what's your opinion? Because this is one of the accounts, I think last year it had one of the highest dividend yields, ranging around 14%, which, if I recall correctly, it was a scrip dividend, right? What's happening? Are investors seeing something the whole market is not seeing? What should we anticipate from these mid-cap stocks, such as Maendeleo Commercial Bank, which is a gainer of 8.8% this week?
Just to add to what Mr. Ami has mentioned there, MBP is maybe a not very popular counter, but one thing is for sure, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, they've made 2 very significant announcements, including opening up their internet banking service, but also getting a license from the regulator to operate nationally. Initially, they only had a regional license. Those are 2 significant improvements, rather, to the operations. So maybe, Mani, you can shed some light on whether they have contributed to the price of this stock. We've seen at the very beginning of December, the counter was trading around 340. However, as we speak, it's around 370, although there has been some fluctuations here from that time until today. What is your take, Imani, on the MBP counter?
Thank you, Ibrahim and Ami. Yeah, so Ibrahim, you somewhat answered the question. One is the graduation of MBP operating on a nationwide scale, but then I think it's mostly from the banking sector performance. If you look at the banking sector performance in the last 4 or 5 years, it's been significant. So you look at last year's capital markets performance, the best performing index is the business and somewhat that the index that covers the banking sector. And look at the overall performance of the banking sector, the balance sheet has been growing significantly. The overall banking sector entire balance sheet has been growing significantly. And this stems from the government's focus on the business environment. We see expansion of businesses, not necessarily new businesses, but existing businesses are also improving. So this has contributed significantly to the performance of the banking sector. So the same plays for Maendeleo Bank. With Maendeleo being approved to trade on a national scale, it just gives them a new level of opportunities. And I guess investors are anticipating on the same, and we see now the price moving upwards. But we are yet to see. Let's just monitor the counter in the coming months. We wait to see the Q1 results, and we wait to see the full year results for 2025 after they've operated for 1 full year as a national commercial bank.
All right. So I think as we finalize our equity segment, I would also like to highlight what has happened, because our listeners will be curious. JHL, Jubilee Holdings, up by 10.8%. What really happened? Actually, just did my observation and noticed that towards this week, Jubilee Holdings, which is a cross-listed stock, actually had a very positive earnings results, where we see its profit after tax, profit before tax went up by 124%, where its net profit, which in another language is the profit after tax, was up by 82%. So that explains the 10.8% gain in a space of 1 week. But also investors were quite positive because its dividend is also up by 12.5%. Last year it paid 12 Kenyan shilling per share. This year is going to pay 13.5 Kenyan shilling per share. So for those who were curious, what is happening with Jubilee Holdings, that is exactly what entailed towards this week. Ruitiko, who's our trader, has been quiet for quite some time. And before we move to the secondary market, I would like for him to drop us a trading idea for this week, for the coming week. Ruitiko, karibu sana.
Thanks a lot, Ami. It has been the week has been a bit quiet compared to the other week. Taking into consideration that we had the 2 holidays, and we are also looking at something like that for the next week, because we also have 1 holiday there. At least we have a 4th trading session compared to the 3 that we had this week. On my side, I would really be very keen on the banking sector and these investment companies, especially Nico and Afriprice. I know we are going to the dividend period, and most of the companies are going to be paying dividends, and we are looking we are looking on very good performance of many counters within the market. And I believe our research team will be very keen on looking at these. The banking sector is currently issuing out their audited financials, and also we are looking at the first quarter financials for the banking sector. But we're also looking at what will they declare as dividend, especially these 2 big banks, CRDB and NMB, and this could highly affect the performance of these investment companies, especially Afriprice and Nico. So I will, my take would be to be very keen on these investment companies, and also to consider the banking sector, especially NMB and CRDB, because if they can perform, if the first quarter performance will be as strong as they have been recording over the recent years, then the new high that both counters have just experienced will be just a starting point. It means that they have more huge potential of the price going up, and yeah, it will be a very good time for investors to take position. If there's an investor who is waiting for these prices to go down, they might be in for disappointment, especially take into consideration that by the time that the dividend is announced and the dividend is paid ex-div date, you might find that all the financials are already out, and the first quarter 1 financials are already out, and at least projection for quarter 2 financials will be there. So you might find that this counter will be even higher than what you're looking at today. Thank you, Ami.
All right. Ibrahim, let's proceed.
Yes, thank you very much, Ami. Thank you, Imani. Thank you, Luitiko, as well, for your good insights, especially on the performance of the stock market the equity market during the week. Now, as we previously informed you, we do invite questions from our listeners, our investors. Please feel free to ask any question. You can use the chat option on Microsoft Teams, but also there is a Q&A option. You are free to write down your question and we will attend to it. But also, if you raise your hand and you would like to ask the question, we'll be able to unmute your mic and we welcome you here. So let me just give 30 seconds to allow for questions, then we'll move on to our next segment relating bonds. Karibuni sana kwa maswali. Sawa, wakati tunaendelea kusubiri maswali ningependa tu kumkaribisha tena Ami ata shed some light kidogo kwenye upande wa matokeo ya mnada wa Treasury bond. Tunafahamu kwamba jana kulikuwa kuna mnada wa Treasury bond. Huu ulikuwa ni mnada wa bond namba 669 which was reopened. Ulikuwa wa miaka 20 wenye kuponi ya 15.25. Ulikuwa very interesting, au matokeo yake yalikuwa very interesting, lakini nisiseme sana, nimkaribishe Ami anaweza ka shed some more light hapa. Ami, karibu sana.
All right, thanks, Ibrahim. So yesterday, as Ibrahim just voiced, it was an interesting day in the auction market. Of course, it was the auction of the 20-year paper, which was actually reopened. So in Tanzania, papers which are the longer end of the yield curve are quite popular. That being said, that is the 20-year paper and the 25-year paper. In this case, it was the 20-year paper being auctioned. So a number of 863 bids were received, and among those, only 213 emerged as successful. The minimum successful price, of course, hovered around 100.2611, which was the clean price. This was equivalent to an average weighted yield to maturity of 15.1. So more or less, the prices were on a premium. Of course, the amount offered by the Bank of Tanzania amounted to Tanzanian shilling 213 billion, but here comes the surprise. The total tendered amount by the market, by the public markets itself, was 760.566 billion. Simply put, 760 billion were on the table. Imani, you have been in the market for more than 10 years. 760 billion being offered or being tendered by the public. Have you seen this number before on your experience?
To the best of my memory, I mean, I've never seen 760 billion shillings being tendered in one auction. Maybe I missed some auction there, but I haven't seen an auction as size as this. It speaks volume of the liquidity that is in the streets, the amount of funds that people or investors possess, and the appetite, as I spoke of in the beginning of the webinar, the appetite that we see from the domestic market towards capital markets. And also it speaks volumes about the development of capital markets, how financial literacy is growing, how the public is interested in putting funds to investments. So this is a new height for the central bank. It's not even the highest of returns that we have seen from treasury bonds. At some point, treasury bonds were trading at 17%, but we never saw this kind of volume being tendered from the public. So it shows the increased domestic appetite to invest in capital markets.
Oh, just one more question. With this participation or with this appetite, what should we anticipate on the equity market prices, and what should we anticipate on the yields on the government bonds, but also if they are also, because government bonds act as benchmarks for corporate borrowers, what should they expect moving forward?
So this might be a blessing in disguise, because the theory of demand and supply is clear. Too much demand for a limited number of supply, the price will increase. So in this case, the price of bonds is set to go up, which lowers the yields, which will be a good thing for the banking sector, but also for the private sector, because if the yields are significantly high, and we have seen in this case the weighted average was a premium price, which means the effective yield is less than 15.25, is less than the coupon yield, which signals that the prices of these bonds are going to premium prices, but also the yields are falling. And as we know that treasury bonds are set the benchmark of returns in an economy, in any economy, because they're considered as the safest, particularly domestic treasury bonds, they're considered as the safest type of investment in any economy. So they set the benchmark return in any economy. So if that return is lowering, it means the benchmark is lowering. And this allows for funds to go into other venturing opportunities. So this might be a blessing in disguise. The central bank did not, I think they accepted about 50-60% of the funds that were tendered, about 50% of the funds that were tendered. So there's about 300 billion that has been returned into the public, and those funds will seek return, they will seek investments, and this might outflow, spill over to other investment destinations, including equities and maybe bonds in the secondary market, and further lower treasury yields. So this is a good thing. In any way you look at it, it's a good thing. It shows increased domestic participation, but also it means the yields might fall, allowing banks to retain more deposits, but also these investments will spill over to other investment opportunities, including the equities market, collective investment schemes, which in turn mostly invest in treasury bonds, but also in other real sectors.
All right, thank you. Mr. Rutiko, what do you anticipate moving forward? Because it's April. We have 2 more months before the end of this budgetary year here in Tanzania. So what do you see the appetite moving forward?
Thank you, Ami. So it seems like the liquidity in the market is there, and the government appetite of taking a lot of money is not there, and it's unfortunate that we have a lot of long-term auctions coming along. But I know that you're going by the end of the budget, and I believe there is an amount that the government should borrow within a particular year, and in most cases, we are going towards the end of the when you're going towards the end of the budgetary year, you find that the government takes fairly low amount of money from the public because of the stretch on the budget, and most of the time you find that they have already utilized the amount that they were supposed to borrow from the local market. So I believe like we are going to have 3 auctions. I believe we'll keep on seeing a lot of money being returned. We have witnessed the same thing when this 669 was opened as a new issuance. They only took 38%. Yesterday they took less than 50%, and and the trend will keep on going. I believe this trend will keep on going. In the May auction, where it will be the best, people usually like the 25-year paper. I believe that a lot of money will be a lot of tenders will be there, but the government will take some or less few than the amount tendered. Yeah, that's my take.
All right. Going back to Q&A, we see there is a question here from our friend Muratia Chester. This is towards Imani. Hello. Chester is saying, is the DSC stock market reacting to Trump's reciprocal tariffs? And do you anticipate any volatility in the coming days?
Hello, Chester. It's good to hear from you. So until now, we can't say there's any reaction from the equities market, particularly from the equities market, in regards to the tariffs that were set or that were published by the US administration. As I said, majority, as you saw in the report, majority of transactions are domestic. So we see more than 90% of transactions. More than 90% of transactions are sourced from domestic investors, and domestic domestic investors are keen of what goes on in the US markets and what goes on in the global markets, but they're not particularly concerned about the tariffs unless it starts affecting the economy. And you see the market is not as significant here. So unless it starts affecting the economy, or maybe it starts affecting the currency, and the reaction of the central bank from that effect might impact investments into equities market. But as of now, we are yet to see any reaction from the equities market in particular. We'll monitor in the coming weeks, particularly in the interbank foreign exchange market. We'll look at the foreign exchange if there's any impact that will be seen from that angle. But from equities, I don't anticipate anything. Unless we see a significant impact in the foreign exchange and the central bank reacts from that, so maybe they raise interest rates, that might affect the banking sector, and we might see some reaction in the stocks, in the banking stocks. But until now, we haven't seen anything. I don't anticipate all of that to happen in the coming few days. I think we'll monitor first the interbank foreign exchange market. If there's any activities there, then we might see some reaction in the equities market.
All right, thank you, Imani. Just to remind our good listeners that we can keep on asking these questions. And also moving forward, I think we will be having more insights on we'll be observing, as Imani have just voiced, what is happening, because in Kenya, I was just checking, in Kenya, actually what happened was completely the opposite of what happened in the Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange towards this week, where foreigners were actually the net buyers, unlike here in Tanzania, where Imani, you have just voiced that foreigners were the net sellers. So we will see how the market picks up. And Ibrahim, we are approaching the end of our weekly capital markets report. Any information, any insights, things to look at, what to anticipate in the fixed income market, or any auctions coming up?
Yes, thank you very much, Ami. Look, there's actually plenty to look forward to in our market, because there is a lot of opportunity to invest. As you know, and I'll just like to also add to our listeners, CRDB Bank, we have a brokerage unit, and we welcome you all to conduct trading, or if you want to invest in different stocks or fixed income securities. We have seen here quite a huge, or quite a significant number of people did not go through the bond auction of yesterday. We welcome them to invest in the secondary market, whereby we can assist them to obtain these bonds, as they will be available, they will be traded in the secondary market at very good prices. So there is plenty of opportunity, but also as you know, every week there is either an auction for T-bills or T-bonds. On the 9th of April next week, there is a T-bill auction. But on the 16th of April, there is a reopening of the 2 years T-bond, which had a coupon of 12.5. But also on the 30th of April in the same month, the 10-year reopening auction will be conducted. Just to remind our listeners, it had a coupon of 14%, but just to finish off, on the 7th of May, just a week after. So these bonds, auction bonds, will be conducted back to back. There will be no gap of a treasury bill bond between the 10-year and the 25 years, according to the calendar. And the 25-year reopening has a very handsome coupon of 15.75. These things to think about, consider going to the future. We welcome our clients, to give us a call, to visit us, to reach out to us for advice, for research data. and everything regarding capital markets. There's so much to look forward to.
All right, thank you a lot. And to our dear investors, be reminded that Monday will be a public holiday, so there will be no trading sessions on Monday. The market will resume on Tuesday. So kindly feel free to reach out for any advice on stocks, investing equities, or participating in the secondary market, in the bond market. Imani, we give you the privilege to close up this session. And what are you telling our investors moving towards next week as we conclude this session today?
Thank you, Ami. I think, as Ritiko said at some point in the discussion, that we'll be looking towards the banking sector. The quarter one just ended, so we are waiting for the results, the quarter one results for the banking sector, but there's a number of companies that haven't published their annual results for 2024. We expect, since the quarter one has ended, we wait to see more publications. In the cement sector, we haven't seen yet the Twiga cement results. So I expect to see some results being released in this month. And the banking sector quarter one results, we expect them to see maybe possibly in the end of April, and they'll set a tone for the performance of this year, because we've seen a significant growth of the banking sector in the last 3-4 years. So we wait to see if the performance is still consistent this year. Furthermore, so we are keen to look at the banking sector. We are keen to look at some equities, but then there's a lot going on in the fixed income space, particularly the treasury bonds. If we look at the auction yesterday, there's a lot of liquidity going into treasury bonds. So we wait to see the coming auctions. But also we are going towards the budget reading, the government's budget planning. The parliament is about to get into the budget, so we wait to see the performance of the GDP report, the performance of the economy up to April. So all of these are things to look at in the coming months. But for next week also, there are few trading days. It's 4 trading sessions. We expect to see more activities than this week, which had 3 trading sessions. But yeah, we see a growing appetite for capital markets, for equities and for bonds particularly. So I want to welcome all investors, all interested parties who are keen to invest in Tanzanian capital markets, but also within the region. We have seen a question here from Chester, who is from MCB Securities. So anyone who wants to invest in Mauritius, we have partnerships in Mauritius. You can invest in Mauritius. But also, if you want to invest in Kenya, we've seen reports here. We have talked about Jubilee Holdings and KCB and the likes. If you want to invest in Kenya, we welcome you. We can take you to invest in Kenya, Uganda, and all over the region. Wherever that the capital account restrictions allow Tanzanians to invest, we have a reach out to those markets. So I want to welcome anyone who is interested. I think capital markets is the future. Thank you, Ami.
Thanks a lot to the rest of the team, but also a huge round of applause to our listeners. Guys, we are here every Friday, so always put your questions together, follow the markets, but more importantly, we are here only for 1 hour every Friday, but the market is always there from Monday to Friday. So as much as you grasp this information, don't forget to take actions on it. CRDB brokerage unit is available, is always there to ensure that you are fully informed so that you can take fully informed decisions. Until next week, guys, let me wish you a very good weekend ahead of you. Let's not drink and drive, rather than let's just drive and enjoy, all right? Have a good weekend. Thanks, team, and thank you, our dear investors.